it's Chelsea Jerusalem here, and I'm here with one of our trusted inspectors, home inspectors, Chris. We just finished a home inspection and thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about why do people get a home inspection and why it's important that you use a professional to get one in the process. So, Chris, we just did this inspection. We found a few things wrong with this house, so I think the seller's the seller's probably not that happy that we had the inspection done, but the buyer's very happy that we know what we're dealing with now.
Sure. The thing about houses is that every house has something going on. So the cool thing about a home inspection, from my perspective, especially working for buyers, which I love to do, is that you kind of get to get into the nitty gritty and know exactly what it is that you're buying. Home inspectors are in charge of doing the whole thing top to bottom. We're trying to get into every little nook and cranny that we can, and sometimes those nooks and crannies are skinny little places. So it's good to get in there and just make positive that you know what all you're looking at, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of areas to a home, and when you're buying a house, there's a lot of things you don't think of other than just how pretty is the kitchen. I love this bathroom. Like, there's a little bit more to home ownership, and you definitely need to know what you're getting yourself into. Like, is this furnace working? Is it not working? How do we fix it if it isn't working? Just kind of getting into those routines of being able to maintain your home in the future, or what you need to do to make sure it's livable now. So what are kind of the key elements of a home that you find are like generally bigger issues that people need to kind of look out for?
Killer question. In the Pacific Northwest, we've got rain out here, so moisture is kind of the constant enemy of a house. As far as that's concerned, making sure that your siding and your roofing certainly are super nicely tuned up. Flashing details are really important here in the Pacific Northwest.
We just learned that on the house. We had a flashing issue. Nobody installed the flashing on the decks when the house had decks put on them, and the entire front of the house had rot from top to bottom. Tens of thousands of dollars in repairs, and the house just has now good siding instead of having bad siding. So that was yucky. So definitely making sure those flashing details and the water intrusion doesn't happen.
Nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. That's the exterior of the house. I mean, that stuff is pretty straightforward. The cool thing, we talked about flashing really specifically. Flashing installation is generally not a high cost thing, but the absence of that installation can be. Mm-hmm. So just making positive that those details are tuned up the way that we'd want them for you guys as homeowners is the way to do it. From the interior of the home, I like to make positive that your HVAC systems are all running the right way. Things like electrical system components, making positive that all your branch circuitry is up to date and safe for you, and that any of your receptacles, certainly your electric panel, are tuned up nicely. We look at plumbing systems as well, making positive that any modern systems are performing the way that they should, and any older systems who might have aging components that are on their way out sort of get called out to have somebody have a look at them for you guys. Making positive that those things are all in working order, I think are super important for kind of the same reasons. Some repairs are cheap to tune it up now so that you know that you've got your bases covered, versus finding out that later on when the tune-ups needed to happen, they just didn't, and then they didn't. Those are more costly repairs generally. Mm-hmm. So as a risk averse, as like a maintenance averse type of a guy, I'm super big on just making positive that folks know what they're looking at with a view to the future. In addition to knowing what's going on right now.
Yeah, if someone had done an inspection on that house and figured out that the flashing wasn't there, all of that damage could have been prevented. So that's just tens of thousands of dollars. If somebody had hired Chris to do the inspection at the time that home was purchased, they would have been able to avoid all of these huge issues from happening. Those contractors are kept busy by people who don't have home inspections done and let problems become bigger problems. Another thing that I know that you do that most people aren't going to want to do on their own when they're looking at a house is going into those spots that people don't generally want to go into, like the crawl space underneath the house. I mean, he just came out of the attic all covered in dust and stuff, and
that's why I wear black on the top. Yeah, my arachnophobia went by the wayside years and years and years ago. Most homeowners don't think about attic spaces. They don't think about crawl spaces, and that's kind of for good reason. Out of sight, out of mind. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't blame anyone for that.
I don't want to hang out there.
well, I don't really want to hang out there either, but I do feel compelled to get into those spots to make positive that there's nothing going on in them. You know, a lot of your major systems can be sort of viewed from the back end in those areas. And so plumbing issues that you might not see can be clearly visible from underneath the house. You know, electrical issues that you might not see can be clearly visible from the attic. And getting into those zones is super important. Chelsea and I are just talking about, like, Washington State wants you to wants a home inspector to traverse those spaces completely. What that means is that I am compelled by the state law to get all around that space to make positive that my eyes are touching all those surfaces and really looking over all those components. And so it does take, like, more crawling around in spots like that than just, like, cracking the attic hatch and saying, yeah, it's a little dusty but looks okay.
Yeah, sometimes you need to crawl to the back corner and poke your moisture meter up in that back corner of the crawl space.
It's always the back corner.
It's always that back corner. Well, I think as a general rule, just having a home inspection done prior to purchasing a home is a great idea. It's kind of, once the house is your house, it becomes your problem. So you want to know what kind of problems you're going to be dealing with before it becomes your issue. So definitely always hire a home inspector. We can get you hooked up with Chris if this is an inspector you're looking for, but if you're working with us, we'll definitely be making sure you're taken care of in that arena. So just, if you ever want any information on buying a home, happyhometeam.com.
MWHinspect.com.